welcome back. It is week 53 on Out on That Line. I'm Geoff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week, buddy?
I got a bad fever, Geoff. I'm feeling so sick, and the only cure is a doctor, but not just any doctor. I'm talking about Dr. Dog.
Oh, well, I'd heard that they had some openings this time of year.
I was lucky to get in, and I don't care that my physician is a canine. I'm proud.
That's excellent. So, obviously, Alex is talking about Dr. Dog, the band, because he went and saw them recently.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little preliminary top of the show shout out to them. They are going to stop touring. They're still going to make music, but they're coming off the road. So I was fortunate enough to see them at the Lawn at Shelburne Farms, which is a great venue.
Mm-hmm.
Saw Guster there earlier in the summer. It's always great. Tanner and I always get there early so we can go right up to the front and lose our hearing.
Yep, excellent.
So the back half of the concert I think was great, but I was totally succumbed to tinnitus at that point. So it was awesome. They put on a hell of a fucking live show. I've always really loved Dr. Dog. I don't think Tanner was super into them until I was like, buddy, they're going to stop touring. And he's like, wait a minute, something exclusive that I can talk about for the rest of my musical life? I'm in. So I thank him for coming. He also picked up my tickets for my birthday. So thank you, Tanner.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
People helping people. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Of course, I'm going to take a swipe at him and shit on him while he does something nice for me.
Well, you got to do it.
It's just the person I am.
It's not like he listens anyway, right?
I don't think so.
Well, that venue is really, I think it lends itself best to the kind of like indie rock scene. Because like Guster, like you're talking about, Dr. Dog, it seems like bands that are in that sort of vein, it's like they're just kind of sometimes weird for the sake of being weird. It seems like Shelburne Farms is the place to be for bands like that.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, and you can sit back on the lawn if you want to, or you can get right up to the front. It's got a lot to offer, including a vegan food truck called like Broccoli Town, and I'm like,
of course,
if we all got together and charged that thing, they'd get the message. We'll knock it over and stomp on all the broccoli.
Oh man, of course there's a vegan broccoli truck.
Yep.
And I've got, let me get this out of the way. I've got nothing against being vegan. I think that's admirable to have that level of self-control. But God damn it, sometimes Vermont does a bad job at bucking stereotypes about it and having a vegan food truck at an indie rock concert.
Yeah. I mean, where
on a farm?
Where's the Birkenstock repair tent? You know what I mean?
Well, that's because people are probably barefoot, probably not even wearing them.
That's a good point. It was what I would call a bra optional crowd, and I don't want to be too much of a pig, but there a certain type went to the show, and I was like, wow, this must be a real treat for the members of Dr. Dog to look out and see all this.
Nice.
I didn't wear a bra.
There was a person at the Coheed concert that did the same thing. I think it was what was it? Maybe during the Suffering, the song. I just looked over and there was no top half of clothing.
Oh boy.
On this girl that was a few people away, and so I elbowed my buddy Andres and I was like, "Hey buddy, check that out." And he was like, "Nice." And then all of a sudden she was gone.
This person was completely
like
topless?
Dust in the wind. Completely topless.
Wow, respect.
Just letting him hang. Yeah, just letting him hang.
Good for her.
Yeah, it's just it's that level of freedom that you get down here in Texas.
Amen. I hope my sister doesn't mind me telling this story, but apparently she went to see, I think it was like Lil Uzi Vert. Something like that. God. And she was at the show and she took off her bra and threw it on stage, and the guy picked it up and licked it, and the crowd went wild. And I was like, Casey, will you ever, like, getting married is not even going to be better than that. That's the peak. You peaked. I don't care how much money you make in your life. You've done it.
That is funny.
Yeah.
And what better person to experience that than your tornado of a younger sister?
My sister.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, this week, what do you say we get to some albums? This week, we've got CHVRCHES with Screen Violence, and we also have We Were Promised Jetpacks with their album Enjoy the View. So we got a twofer for you folks. So Alex was the one that suggested Churches. I suggested We Were Promised Jetpacks. So this is a real collaborative episode here today. I think they were both bands that like each of us was aware of, but the ones that suggested it, each band, were the ones that were more into that group, I think is safe to say. So I'm interested to hear what we're both going to have to say about these albums, because I think these were both very, like, it was a very Churches album, and this was a very We Were Promised Jetpacks album. I feel like they were very representative of the artists themselves and their past work and kind of where they've been going throughout their whole careers. So we're going to start with Churches, and we've selected 2 songs apiece from each album, what we normally do for these. And the first song up from the Churches album is going to be Asking for a Friend. It is, I believe, the lead track, right?
Yes.
On the album. I think that's numero uno.
Correct.
So this was one that I had chosen, and it, for whatever, I've always loved Churches. You know, they're a band that I've always enjoyed, but not one that I've gone out of my way to listen to a ton. When they're on, I really like it. And I've listened to them off and on. Like, they're on the dance music playlist that I have. So I hear them somewhat often, probably not as often as you've listened to them. But this song, I really, really felt like it was a great lead off to an album that I wasn't sure what I was going to get, but I ended up getting a lot of different things from this album, and I enjoyed it overall, and it really started well with this song for me.
Yeah, and also, like, not to make a liar out of you, I can't say that I'm like the biggest Churches super fan. Mm-hmm. Largely why I chose it was for a long time I was under the impression Churches had a lot of stroke, and I did not realize how many people they lost as their albums went. Their one from 2018 was like an all-time professional low. People were pissed. A lot of people were like done with Churches. And this album, by all consensus, is a return to form. So I was really interested to see how much of it resembled the Churches that I have listened to. And I would say overall, this album, and exemplified in this song, this album, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I think it's very glossy.
Okay.
I think it's like very great synth. Not every song hits with me, but overall, I think it really works. And then, I think it's, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but I think someone like Tame Impala did a little more with the synth template. So, again, enjoyable. I'm not here being like, fuck, it sucked. I thought it was a good album. But it didn't blow my hair back. In terms of being a return to form, I appreciated it. And Asking for a Friend was the exemplary return to that form. I think it's like an O. Henry situation, which is like, you can't grow if you aren't kind of making some mistakes and feeling pain, but the trade-off is you feel pain. So I thought it was an interesting way to start it off, this idea of growing pains, which they definitely experience as a band.
Yeah. And I really, so the Churches that I was familiar with is a particular song, The Mother We Share. I think it's one of their more popular ones. Just the melody on that one has always been something that I really enjoyed. And there's a few other songs to a lesser extent that I've enjoyed. Probably, I would say there's 6 or 7 Churches songs that I hear somewhat regularly. So certainly not like very familiar with their deep catalog of music. But it really, I enjoy when Churches is at its most Churches, I guess, if that makes sense to people. That's when I enjoy them most, because I think it's just really upbeat, at least melodically and sonically in general, more upbeat than a lot of other music is. The lyrics don't always match that, but I feel like it's also very honest lyrics. They do skew sometimes towards like the really kind of high and mighty electronic music lyrics that are saying, sound very profound, but they're really not saying much of anything. I think they do a better job at having some meaning behind their lyrics than, say, like Calvin Harris has in his songs, in as far as that style of music goes. So I always have given them credit for that lyrically, it seemed like they were very focused on crafting a good song. And if it happened to have a really good dance beat to it, that was another benefit. It wasn't made specifically to be an EDM song that people go nuts for at festivals and stuff like that. It's like, it seems like they are focused on making good music. And it happens to be that the music they make often fits into that kind of EDM category.
Yeah, and I will admit that like EDM is a massive gap in my musical knowledge. I listen to none of it. So I don't know if this is his name, but like Marshmello, is that a person?
Yep.
Is it Marshmello?
Marshmello. Yep.
Never felt.
He's the one that wears the so Deadmau5 wears the one that's like the mouse hat mask thing, whatever. And Marshmello literally wears a marshmallow shaped head cover with a smiley or like a face like drawn on it.
Okay, yeah, kind of like a Purge face where they've got like X's for eyes and the weird jack-o'-lantern mouth.
Yep.
Yeah, not something I listen to. I never felt more akin to a boomer than I'm like, that marshmallow fellow. But yeah, I'm not into EDM at all. No disrespect to people who are. But that's kind of the direction CHVRCHES was moving for a while, and that's why they lost a lot of people. Is like, so you're just going to dissolve into the primordial ooze of EDM? That's not what we came here for. We came for a little something more. So you're right. There's moments where they kind of lose themselves in, you know, paper thin lyrics that are projecting an idea but not expounding upon it. But I think in this album, they did a good job of stepping away from that, even though, as we'll talk about coming up, have a couple problems with some of their lyrical content.
Yeah. So the next song is actually one of your picks, California. So tell us a little about it.
They specifically say in an interview, the band does, that every band has a California song. And they actively avoided writing a California song because all of them are like, oh, California, the place of dreams. And then you get there and it really sucks. And that's absolutely true. How many times have we heard that, especially lately? No disrespect to the great Billie Eilish, but she's got it. Lorde did it. I mean, everybody lately. We've been dealing with a lot of California as a glittering turd subject matter. And it kind of led me to this weird crossroads, which is my theme for the episode, which is that I feel like I'm starting to enter my cranky old fuck phase. I'm getting a little burnt out on the lack of variety with not necessarily the things we choose. We're really good at picking different stuff, but this track for me, I chose it because it sums up my point, which is like, people just aren't doing enough different stuff. What can you do with a California song that is a different concept? And we haven't hit that yet. So I'm just getting a little burnt out on people not having anything new to say and then forcing this kind of material anyway.
Yeah. And I understand that, you know, their experience, everybody is having their own personal experience in California, right? So everybody certainly has the right to write a song about said experience. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not against the law to do that. Right. There should be some rules in place, though, about how many songs that say the same damn thing are allowed to exist. And you have to submit to whatever authority we can come up with, whatever government offshoot agency we can throw a couple $1 billion at, will be the ones to say, sorry, this has too much in common with Dr. Dre's California from 1998 or whenever the hell that, or 1997, whenever the hell that was. This has too much in common with that. You must redo it. You must come up with something new, you know? And it's just like, we need something like that. And California is probably not the only thing that is a subject of a song that needs this same overhaul. So listeners, if there's a genre of like a specific type of song, not a genre of music, but a specific type of song that you feel like is overdone, let us know. Because I think that could be a good idea for a segment, is like what is played out and needs to change. Like it can still be good, but needs to get some new blood in there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I look at it from the perspective of like someone like Warren Zevon is writing out of a sense of necessity and pain. And I don't want to call Churches untalented, but the California song feels forced, and a lot of modern stuff feels forced. What do people want to hear, not what do I have to say? What looks good, not what feels good, which is why I respect Billie Eilish and Olivia Rodrigo in particular. And we'll throw Tyler, the Creator, in there too, because those are like the 3 albums I was the highest on recently. I respect that they are singing their heart song and not just like, well, you know, people love TikTok, I'll do a song about Charlie D'Amelio. Like, I'm kind of swaying from the other. The pendulum swings from my boomer talk to my Gen Z talk now. Save a little face. I don't know. I don't want to shit on all modern artists axiomatically, but I have noticed when stuff rings hollow, it's typically because you can tell that they were checking a box. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
yep. I completely agree with that. I think what the issue is right now, and I could be totally off base here, but what I think the issue is right now is that everybody has access to create music, but because the world is the way it is and everybody's so disconnected from things that it's like you're not having, a lot of people are not having, I shouldn't say, you know, like the word you used, axiomatically, everybody is not having these new and different experiences, but a lot of people are having, and I'd say more than 50% of us are having the same type of life experiences where a lot of your time is spent on your phone. A lot of your time is spent just on the internet, watching TV, watching Netflix. There's like when you think about what people had to do back before you could just sit and have the world's knowledge at your fingertips, you had to go out into the world to do stuff. You couldn't just buy it from Amazon. Like you had to go to a store. You had to go out and get to know people. So like I feel like you have a lot more human to human interaction before our generation. So naturally, when you kind of bottleneck those experiences where everybody's experiencing the same thing, you're going to get a lot of the same music. You know, you're going to get music coming from the same place. They might change how they interpret it and how they present it, but the subject matter is going to have a lot in common, artist to artist. And I think that's a big issue we've run into right now.
And it's disappointing because you get labeled a hipster if you're enthusiastic about something that other people find borderline unlistenable. Like Lingua Ignota just came out with Sinner Get Ready. That album is a 10 out of 10 for me. Her creativity, I think I've talked about how it's this cosmic gumbo of her industrial metal style, her like hard Catholic iconography that she uses for this like austerity to get to convey the seriousness of the things she's talking about, because most of her stuff is anchored around dealing with the trauma from sexual assault, not just hers but globally. Holy is the Name of My Ruthless Axe is a song. It's like so fucking haunting. You listen to something like that, it's not fun zipping around going to get groceries and mowing the lawn music. It's sit, listen to it, absorb it, take it in. There's nothing like it. But you recommend it to people, and they're like, what is this weird, like, canticle garbage? And it's again, not to be a hipster, but there's so much, like you said, like, things have become relatively homogenized. And it's a hard sell to get people to listen to something that off the fucking wall. But it's so rewarding once you've been saturated with stuff that's just the same. Yeah.
And, you know, I think that's what Kanye did. Back when he started really introducing, like, you know, because Bone Thugs and Harmony had melody with rap music, and there's certainly other groups that did as well, like Belle Biv DeVoe did the same thing. You know, there's plenty of groups that have had a lot of melody with their rap music, but Kanye really, like, for some reason just made it seem new and different when he came out with like Graduation and then My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and like those albums spawned today's generation of rap music. I mean, it's you know, without Kanye, there's probably no Drake. You know, there's probably no there's no Lil Durk, there's no Lil Baby. You know, there's none of these people that have so much melody involved with their music to go along with really good just lyrical chops. So you want to have somebody that does something new, right? So I think that's what we're searching for, is like, that's why you like Lingua Ignota, because it's something crazy different. That's why I like things like We Were Promised Jetpacks, because it's just like they're just doing what they've always done, and they're not trying to present something that they haven't been or won't continue to be. And I feel like that's where churches lost their way a little bit, so I think it's a big issue is that we just have very few people that are willing to step outside the box. Or maybe that's not incorrect. There's probably a lot more people willing to step outside the box if they knew that they would have some success while they did it. And I think knowing you can release a certain type of music with a certain sound, and it's going to hit all those algorithms, and it's going to get in those playlists, and because of your name, you're already famous, you're going to be able to get a lot of airplay for this. So you go for your mass audience versus your, who would connect the best with you artistically. And I think that's when you take the wrong path there, that's how we end up. And I think most of the famous artists now do this. They take the path of least resistance that pays them the most money. And you can't really fault them for that, because the opportunity to do it, I would sell out in a hot goddamn second. I'll tell you what, you pay me enough, I'd do it. But it's just like, that's why I think you get some good flashes from churches in here of why you like them in the first place. And you get some of the flashes of, where they kind of started to go wrong a little bit. But it's like, I think this is and it makes it sound like it's a disease or something. It's not. It's just somebody has to do something new. Somebody has to get very famous doing something new. And I think that's going to help kick off our next musical kind of renaissance.
Yeah. I kind of feel that way about Baby Billy. At least, when we all fall asleep, where do we go? I thought that was a good first step. But then speaking of like doing the safe thing and kind of going back to the well, my next pick was How Not to Drown. And I'll start with what I really liked. Great kind of Cranberries, Dolores O'Riordan sound vocally. Really appreciated that. The drum and the piano work are A+. Great stuff. I didn't really like Robert Smith's contribution to this. Robert Smith of The Cure, for those who may not know.
Oh man.
I didn't hate it, but it just felt a little too like polished and out of place, and I felt not as vitriolic, but sort of similar to when Miley Cyrus had Billy Idol do Grandpa's Spooky Halloween Party, or whatever that fucking stupid song was.
Oh god. Night something.
Night Crawling.
Right? Was it Night Crawling? Yeah.
Fucking garbage ass song. But this is not a garbage song.
I kind of liked it.
But oh my god. How dare you? I mean, like, this one's fine. It's not like, ew, gross. The Robert Smith part was totally fucked. The song itself kind of falls apart as it goes, but there was something about it. I'm like, this is just so weird. Good for them to get to work with one of their heroes. They're all big Cure fans, but I just can't really put my finger on what. There's just something that felt a little crass and commercial, because you can tell that they owe some of their new wave sound to acts like The Cure, which would explain why they're Robert Smith fans. But something about it just felt really fucking off to me. I can't quite articulate it.
I think it's because I will start by saying I fucking love this song. I thought because I love The Cure. I mean, I love that era of 80s music, like that very, like the synth pop, very sad boy music. Like, I love that. And The Cure was the best to ever do it when it comes to that kind of music. And I was really excited when I saw this song, and you had chosen it, so I was like, I knew he was going to get it, because I'd listened through once, but I wanted to listen through again just to kind of make sure I knew which songs I wanted to do. And between my first and second listens of it, you had texted me to give me your picks, so I was like, oh, he got it. So I had to pick the two that I chose instead. But I thought it sounded like a Cure song. That was the thing to me. I was like, they just did, this was more a Cure song featuring Churches than it was a Churches song featuring Robert Smith to me.
I think maybe that's part of what bugged me a little bit, is because you're right, it's a good song and it's literally just, it's not even necessarily like the vocals so much as it is his presence on the song. I think because it sounds so much like a Cure song, it's so obvious to bring him in, and then like,
yeah,
it's just like, I get it, he's older, and I'm not saying he didn't try, but the energy just felt weird. I know that's like not a very scientific explanation, but it just, it something about it felt off, and it doesn't necessarily destroy my enjoyment of the song. But when I saw Robert Smith's name on Spotify, I was like, oh shit, holy fuck. And then I listened and I was like, something about that didn't go down the way I thought it would.
Have you listened to a lot of The Cure?
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's why. So like I said, I love The Cure.
Yeah.
So when this song sounded like a Cure song, I was like, I'm on board. This is awesome. And I suppose in the context of it being a Churches album, maybe that's not a great thing. But I think they idolize Robert Smith so much that, like, when the Killers had Bruce Springsteen on the song with them recently, it was like Bruce Springsteen was heavily featured, and you could tell they like picked that song specifically because the Killers, you can tell, are like dripping in influence from Bruce Springsteen, no matter what era of the Killers you listen to. But I think they wanted to make sure that they picked a song that was like the most Bruce-like song so that he would fit in the best. And I think that's what they were going for here, is like, maybe not when they wrote it that they were like, oh, let's make it sound like a Cure song. They probably had it written and then realized that it sounded like a Cure song. And they were like, I wonder if we can get Robert Smith. And them being a band of note and him probably not having much else going on, it's like, yeah, I'll hop in there and do it.
Apparently, he reached out to their management to say he'd be interested in doing something, and that's when they hooked up with him. And again, I think it's laudable. It's not a bad song. It's just me over here. I have a little cilantro syndrome where, some people don't quite have the enzymes to help them enjoy cilantro. And I just have a little bit of that here. It's no one's fault. It's just me. I was born this way.
Well, why don't we finish off the Churches album with actually the song that finishes off the album itself, is called Better If You Don't. And this was one of my picks because this did not sound like a typical Churches song. And I was going to say something before, but when you mentioned the Cranberries and Dolores O'Riordan, when I listened to this song, Better If You Don't, that is all I was getting from this song was Dolores O'Riordan. And while I will say, I think Dolores O'Riordan they have different ranges. Dolores O'Riordan was definitely much more of a rock and roll voice than, what is it, Lauren Mayberry, is that her name? I think, right?
Something like that.
The singer in Churches. Yeah. So she's got a she's got a good voice, but I think she doesn't have quite like the powerful range that Dolores O'Riordan does. So her being able to make me kind of hear that influence is really, I think, very admirable on this song. Whether you think this song is that great or not, because honestly, I don't love it, but it just gave me those vibes of the Cranberries. I'm like, it's cool that this can still be a Churches song, because she's got such a distinctive voice, but make me feel like it's kind of hearkening back to something that I really used to enjoy a lot as well.
And it's cool because I feel so bad I don't know her name. I looked at it all day and now it's just gone. It's out of my brain. But her voice is somewhere in between Casey Musgraves and Dolores O'Riordan, in the sense that she has a very childlike sound, but there's some real power behind it. So whereas Casey Musgraves kind of got buried under an avalanche of synth and bass and stuff like that, and the production elements kind of covered her up, Homegirl can cut through everything else that's happening with the production on Churches. Like you said, not quite rock and roll like Dolores O'Riordan or the Cranberries, but I think it was an especially good feature for her voice on this last song because it's so stripped back. There's a really nice way to end it, which is like, you could have gone balls to the wall and, leave them wanting more. But it was kind of a deconstruction of the Church's sound, and kind of a contemplative ending. This idea, like, nostalgia comforts, but nostalgia kills. And I don't think you'd want that to be like a big bracing club beat. So I thought it was a good way to end it with a little, to not make it overly complicated. Don't put a hat on a hat.
Yeah, they were, and I thought overall on this album, I'm going to say, if you're a Churches fan, stream it. If you've never cared about Churches, this one's not going to make you start caring about Churches. So I'm going to say stream it in general. Not like a super passionate one. I did enjoy the album a lot, but because I already enjoy Churches, and this was kind of going back to the sound that they enjoyed. But if you didn't like that sound, yeah, you're probably not going to like this one.
Yeah, same for me. I'll say a hard thumbs in the middle, but positive. Stream it. It's not a hearty endorsement, which sounds shitty, but like you said, I enjoyed it. I liked it. It's not bad, but I'm kind of stuck with a hipster itch here where I want a little more. So I recognize the good qualities of this, but yeah, stream it if you're a Churches fan. Stream it if you're on the fence. But if any of this was not a ringing endorsement, then I guess you're not going to check it out.
Yeah, that's the thing. We, I know our listeners are very loyal. So if we tell them to jump, they'll say how high. So if we weren't that interested in this album, they probably won't be either.
Yeah.
But maybe they'll be interested in Enjoy the View by We Were Promised Jetpacks. Now, I don't know if you had ever really listened to them. I feel like I probably over the years had sent you like a song or two maybe by them. But this was one that I saw this album was coming out and I got a little excited for it. So I was like, I'm looking forward to this because I've seen them live. They're really great. And I've listened to everything they've done. There's a bunch of stuff that I listen to like all the time. So it's like this, I was excited for this one.
This is fascinating to me because I legitimately did not know anything of We Were Promised Jetpacks until your singles video.
Yeah.
You did a We Were Promised Jetpack song, and I had never, so maybe you did, and it went right over my head. I don't recall having ever heard anything else by them. How did you find them?
So I had heard that song, Quiet Little Voices. I had heard that song, and I think that's the one I did for the singles video. I had heard that was on like some mixtape or playlist or something years ago. So I always liked that song. So then I went and like had kind of listened to them, like that album, and probably for a year or two. That was before even moving down to Texas. But then once I had lived down here for a while, I kind of forgot about them. Didn't really listen to them a lot, maybe once in a while. But a friend of mine down here said that they were doing the 10-year anniversary of the album that Quiet Little Voices came from. And so I was like, fuck yeah, like let's go see it. So we went and they killed it. And so since then, for the last couple of years, I've been just, consistently listening to them again. Just love those Scottish boys,
Yeah, actually, this was a whole Scottish episode. Churches, they're Glaswegian. And We Were Promised Jetpacks, they're from Edinburgh.
Yep. Well, that's some weird synchronicity, isn't it?
I like that a lot. Look at us go. So smart.
Yeah.
So
and
intuitive.
I just watched Braveheart.
Oh, shit.
What the hell is going on around here?
It's a little bit of a Scottish renaissance for the boys.
I guess so. But yeah, that's how I like kind of came to know We Were Promised Jetpacks, like very, very like indie band. But if you like bands like Shame or Turnstile, who I did another episode on, if you like Arctic Monkeys, there's probably some stuff that We Were Promised Jetpacks does that you would enjoy. So, I'm going to come right out and say what my opinion on this one is going to be is stream it. And I'm going to tell you a little more about why. And I'm sure Alex will let you know. So the first song that we picked on this one was one of mine called All That Glittered. And this to me was like the epitome once again of We Were Promised Jetpacks. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's like, they're kind of like the National, where it's like almost like that very monotone kind of driving guitar beat, driving drum beat. But I think where they separate themselves, and thankfully so, is the vocals. I think the lead singer of We Were Promised Jetpacks does a much better job at being vocally dynamic instead of just monotone all the goddamn time. Like every song sounds the same. And it's just a very indie rock sound for the most part. They can get to rocking pretty hard sometimes, but it's like a very indie rock sound for the most part, with very introspective lyrics. I wouldn't say like overly sad necessarily, but just like very much like observational, both emotionally and physically, of the world around them. And I think they do a really good job with that. Have some pretty clever turns of phrase. And I think they're just a very interesting band to listen to each time they come out with something new.
I think All That Glittered was musically so fucking tight. Like so technically excellent. One thing I've noticed about friend of the pod Tanner is he tends to gravitate towards musicians and bands and songs that are very technically excellent, very tight, very in the pocket. Whereas I kind of embrace chaos and a dog-eared kind of, I don't want to say sloppiness, like missed notes or something like that, but kind of going in surprising, unexpected places and taking weird chances. It's like we talked about. Just interesting stuff. Like Chicano Batman is a act that I've been listening to a lot that does that for me.
Okay.
Helado Negro, another one. So there are some bands that like aren't necessarily as tight and structured and cohesive and thrive on that lack of structure. But We Were Promised Jetpacks, they are so musically excellent and tight, and it's just perfectly mixed and nobody's missing a beat. It's super polished, and nowhere else is that more apparent than All That Glittered. It is so fucking tight.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know, for whatever reason, the way they kind of tell the story about an interaction and like the quick observational lines they'll have about it, and just the way, we always talk about this, like how you put the words together, really matters. There's a difference between the all-time great songwriters like, I'm going to say Joni Mitchell, even though I'm not personally a fan, but like Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, these people that are like luminaries of songwriting, and because of the way that they put words together to present a perspective in a way that the common man was just not able to do. And I think that's the sort of thing, not saying that We Were Promised Jetpacks is like the level of Bob Dylan for songwriting, but it's those sort of things that separate a famous group and somebody that's very successful in doing what they do from somebody that tries to, but just isn't able to sell a record. It's just those little things, how tight they are musically, the way they put the words together, that continues to have you come back, and it therefore is able to stay interesting instead of just finding the simplest way from point A to B, like someone like a Taylor Swift does. They do a great job at presenting the emotion and then the reaction, and I think that's a really key thing to do, is presenting layers to dig into rather than just very surface level songwriting.
And to me, the layers are in the music. There's just like, there's so many little pieces to pick out. The layers and the emotion to me are in the music, in the sound. I honestly didn't get like too much profundity out of the lyrics. I can't say they're bad. I didn't get as much out of them as I think you did, but I like that, because the lyrics are almost just giving you a flavor of what they're talking about, so that you understand like, okay, this is a breakup song. And then from that point on, they're kind of bones that the real meat, which is the music, hangs on. And the music does such a good job of evoking the emotional subject matter. And I love, love, love that. I've said that a million times. When you can make a song sound like it felt when you wrote it, that's a huge success to me. And I think that's something We Were Promised Jetpacks does really, really well. I'm not super in love with their lyrics, but I am super in love with their sound.
Yeah, they are. And that's what got me, was it just sounded like something different.
Yeah.
There's probably plenty of bands that sound similar to them, but it just seems so like authentic You know, when they were singing about it, it's like, this is the music we play. You know, he a lot of bands, you know, especially from the UK, the way they sing is they like really try not to sound like they have an accent. And he just lets his rip. And I think that's such an interesting thing because you just don't hear that. You know, when you hear a British person saying, like, generally it sounds very American. Like there's a lot of British singers that if you didn't know they were British, you wouldn't know by hearing them sing. And I think that's another thing because it lets you understand that he's from a different place than I am. He had a different kind of upbringing, and it really sets the scene and allows you to understand his perspective even more when you can literally hear his voice, so it can feel like you're really a part of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Do you want to move on to the next one, which I think was your pick? Don't Hold Your Breath.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Don't hold your breath for too long. The next one I chose, and this one was because it just, as much as All That Glittered is a classic We Were Promised Jetpacks song, this one I heard, and it, like, for me, it was my favorite one on the album just because it just hit every single note about why I love this band and why for years I've continued to come back to them. And why it's just like, it's so satisfying to have a band like this. It's like Against Me has become, you know, like for me, Coheed and Cambria, you know, it's just like old reliable, you know that they're going to come out with something that maybe it sounds different than what they've always done, but it's like at this point you trust them, you know, you're willing to go along for the journey. And this song, I was like, okay, they've been coming out with albums and not sounding too different through all of them. Like, are they going to do something new? And they didn't. And a lot of times you'd be like, oh, they should have grown a little bit. But it's like, for me, it's just perfect. Like, this is exactly what I wanted.
Well, and they're completely unpretentious about it, which again is something I really like about the lyrics, is they're not bending over backwards to come up with something that they think sounds profound and winds up sounding contrived. We've heard it with Lana Del Rey. Chemtrails over the country club. What does that mean? Like, through and like, you don't have to spoon feed it to us, but through context, we should have some interpretation. It's like Dave Grohl lyrics. I think you're just saying shit that sounds cool to you with no real connection to it. So I will take bare bones functional lyrics that are unpretentious over fucking commie gobbledygook, like some of our faves do. What I love about this song is I liken it in my notes to The Blob. It feeds on its own sound, and it just keeps growing and fleshing out and adding out those layers as it goes. It's again, I liken it to the final song on Punisher, Phoebe Bridgers, where it just grows. And that song goes way more off the rails. It just kind of like oozes out of its seams. Again, this is very structured, very patterned, but it doesn't have to go in different directions because everything you need is there from the onset. And if they stick to the formula and stick to the pattern, there is so much to enjoy that you don't need it to go in another direction. You just need it to keep going forward in the pattern it's established, which is already totally pleasing. So yeah, I think this one had a lot of that like Killers, Arctic Monkeys vibe for me. And I didn't love it because of that, but it made me think. One of my notes was, this could have been a song that came out 15 years ago, and if it had, it would have been at the vanguard of that, like, Brit post-punk movement. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, the way they build the songs, and it's just the way they always have. I mean, Quiet Little Voice is probably, like, the best example of it, but it's just, like, the same reason that I love Against Me, and the same reason I love Searching for a Former Clarity as an album, is because so many songs in that one, it just, like, keeps going and building, and especially the song Problems, which is like one of my favorite songs of all time. The way it just like, when it gets rolling, holy shit, does it get rolling. And that's what We Were Promised Jetpacks is capable of doing. Maybe they don't have nearly as much aggression as Against Me used to have back in those days. But it's still that same level of like adding, and every piece just like is another piece of that puzzle that makes the whole song that ends up just crushing it by the time you get 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah. No, I really fucking appreciated that. And in a similar way, my next pick, or my first one out of these, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. My first note is, Arctic Monkeys, is that you? And I hate to like, well, it's a compliment when I compare you to another band. Like, it should stand on its own. And We Were Promised Jetpacks, definitely, they stand on their own. But the irony is they do that, and this is also a song about tryhards. You want to be complete. You want to be unlimited. You want to be someone who is aspirational. But all that means is you're presenting a facade and you're totally hollow on the inside. You can't really enjoy any accolade if you get it, because some people can probably look at you and go, you're full of shit. If it's all a performance and you're not leading with your authentic self, what is the reward in there? People will either not like it because they can tell you're full of shit, or they will like you for the wrong reasons and they're not really liking you. And all of that will just explode your fucking brain. And this could have been a very mournful song that was like, oh, it's so sad how confused I am. Instead of steering into the depression, they went full bore with the mania. And again, it is very controlled. I don't even want to say chaos or anarchy. It's very controlled mania, I guess. Because nothing about their music is chaotic until it is. And we'll talk about that. But they went with this like really upbeat kind of like attacking sound rather than something that's just like wallowing in misery. It's almost like your brain is broken to such a degree that you've given over to madness, and there's nothing you can do but say fuck it and laugh. The organ flourishes were fucking beautiful. The surf rock guitar was perfect for that sort of psychotic break idea. I think the dreamy quality was really great. I really enjoyed this song. From the first note, I was hooked.
Yes. And this song has one of those examples where right off the bat, he goes, blood, sweat, tears. I've been hiding all of these accordingly because I don't want to share a weakness. Now, the word accordingly, that to me is what takes him from just a regular everyday songwriter into something more, where it just allows you to like really let that verse sink in, because let me read it without that. Blood, sweat, tears. I've been hiding all of these because I don't want to share a weakness. Like, that sounds like nothing, right? Just that little addition of I've been hiding all of these accordingly with that little pause. It just is like, makes you realize how much he has to work to hide the blood, sweat, tears, that it stops that little part of the verse from being a total pass through, tossed off little thing that you don't even pay attention to. It's those little touches that I love about his songwriting, because it just adds that little extra that makes you really contemplate and sit with those words and figure out what they mean to you. And it's just, that's something he does that I can absolutely appreciate.
Yeah, definitely. This was, I don't want to say it was one of the more cohesive songs, because that would imply that everything that came before wasn't cohesive. But I just appreciated the fact that, like I said, this song had a manic sensibility to it, but everything worked. It wasn't like a lot of elements crashing on top of each other. And again, the main draw for me really is the music, and the lyrics serve to create that framework. I don't know. I just thought this was kick-ass. It's got so much energy. And again, I like that they didn't go the obvious route and be like, let's do the depressive downswing to it. So for that reason, I'm a big fan. I like that song.
Excellent. So the last one we picked for this album is Nothing Ever Changes. And this was your other pick for this one.
So my last note under Blood, Sweat, and Tears says, nothing about their music is chaotic or out of place. And my first note for Nothing Ever Changes is, until this song. It's barely post-punk because it's mostly just punk. I mean, this is a very cheeky song. And you had said he doesn't really do monotone with the voice. And while I think that's true, I kept kind of looking at the voice and being like, it functions as another instrument. So there's not a lot of like variance or flourish. Like, I always go to Tom Waits, who like won't do the same song the same way twice. It's just, you can't with that kind of sound. It's too hard to bottle it. So it's not a slam to be like, well, this guy's voice is just another instrument. I think that's a very calculated, very smart choice, because again, the sound is the thing. You don't want to do something that's going to detract from it. But I feel like he decided to kind of cut loose on Nothing Ever Changes because the vocals are really striking and really lively here. And I really appreciated that. I was like, you only have to do that for me once. And it's not like he was trying to prove anything, but it definitely proved to me like, okay, he can do it. This is possible. They just choose to be a little more disciplined. But I like when they let their hair down.
Yeah, they are. And that's the thing is they can be like, We Were Promised Jetpacks is the tale of two bands. They have their really subdued, like shoegazer kind of rock music, very much like like Travis and Coldplay in their early days. Like they very much have that style of music, but then they can turn on the jets and they can just like melt your face with like a riff or the drum beat, whatever it is. But they can, when they need to go, they can go. And that's what I really love about them is like whatever needs to happen, whatever switch needs to get flipped, they always seem to be able to find that switch and they do the right thing in the right place. And everything I've heard by them, I don't know if there's anything that I don't like actively like that I wouldn't want to hear again.
Yeah. And this is an album I'll go back to, and I will, with full credit to you, of course, impress upon friend of the pod, Tanner, because he made me sit in his basement and listen to 7 Frank Turner songs in a row. And while I did enjoy them, the bill comes due, Tanner. The bill comes due. And I think this would be a perfect contribution because, again, I listened to some messy shit. This, I think he'll get something out of. I got something out of it because, again, the message of the song is basically like change is painful, but it's necessary lest you live a life of quiet desperation. Nobody wants that. So nothing's going to change until you change it. It reminded me of the Frank Turner song, Josephine. Nobody gets remembered for the things they didn't do. This is a very similar message, which is like, frontiers are where you find them. If you want to change something, change it. It's tough. It's going to be really fucking uncomfortable. But if you want something bad enough, you have to take whatever steps are necessary to get there. So I think it's a great, it's a powerful message, and it was, I think, a great way to end this one.
Yes, yeah, I enjoyed this one. I mean, I think it was always going to happen because I love this band anyway. I did enjoy this one a lot more than the CHVRCHES album. It's obviously it's getting a stream it from me. I think you got to be a certain type of bad person to not enjoy listening to this. Maybe it's not your total cup of tea. But I think listening to it once won't kill you. So you should give We Were Promised Jetpacks some streams so they go out on tour again so I can go see them again. And go listen to the album. If you happen to love it, let us know. If there's anything else you want to hear about, let us know. We'd love to get some more listener requests. It's been a couple weeks since we did a listener submission, I think. So it's about time. The bill is coming due for y'all. Just go ahead and get us some music, some new stuff to listen to. You can find us on Instagram at Out on That Line, on Twitter at Out on That Line 1. You can send us an email, outonthatline@gmail.com. Wherever you're listening to us now for podcasts, keep doing that. You'll also find us on YouTube. Hashtag Out on That Line is what you want to search there. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We come out with new content on there. You get 2 new pieces of content every single week on YouTube. You'll get the weekly episode as usual, plus a singles video. And there will be another one ready to go, hot off the press by the time you hear this on Monday. So go check that out if you haven't already. And Alex, is there anything else that you'd like to cover this week?
Yes, I almost went an entire episode without referencing Frank Zappa, so we're getting it in under the wire.
I knew you'd do it.
Bam.
I knew it.
Bam.
'Cause I knew it, but I was like, if I know it, he knows it. I was like, he'll get it in there. And you got it in there.
I always get it in. Don't you worry. As George Costanza would say, well, that's it for me.
All right, then. Well, until next time.